My name is Carla Jackson, and I'm a third grade teacher at Baines Elementary in West Feliciana Parish. Over the past couple of weeks, our students have been discussing and reading about different landmarks and memorials in our country. Today I will be asking students to read an article about the person who designed the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I chose this expository text because the students have been asking many questions about who built the landmarks and how did they come up with the idea. And so I wanted to find something that they were interested in, so I let their questions guide my instruction. So I picked an article about Maya Lin, who was the designer of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I want you to look at the front cover of that article that I just gave you. Just look at the front cover, and I'm going to read the title. It says, Maya Lin, a young artist with courage. Now, when we open up this article, it is an informational article. It's actually an expository text. With the new Common Core State Standards, one big change and transition has been the complexity of text, especially nonfiction text. The vocabulary, non-literal language, and content have been a struggle for most students. I am very curious of who Maya Lin was and what kind of artist was she and why did she have to have courage? Those are the questions I'm wondering about. One thing I stress to my students is that when they get a text, especially nonfiction, even though they can read every word on the page, it doesn't mean that they can truly comprehend it. So what we need to do is teach these students patience and how to slow down with their reading to truly get a good comprehension of the text. When I open up an informational text, sometimes I do not want to start reading it. I go straight to the pictures. I go straight to the captions. If there's a map, I go look at the map or the bar graph. I look at that first, and then I start reading. And then I go back and look at it again. And that's what we need to do when we're reading. One strategy that I have taught the students is a note-taking strategy, in which when the students get the text, the first thing they do is number their paragraphs, and then we start reading. And as we're reading, we are stopping to have discussion. What words do we not understand? What words are important and we should highlight? Maybe we should circle this and put a question mark here because we're not understanding exactly what that term means. We write a gist on the side of every paragraph that tells the main idea. We have discussion about connections they have. What did this remind you of? Does this remind you of something we've already read about or something in your life, or maybe a movie you saw or another book that you read? So we try and make those connections, ask questions, draw a little picture on the side to help them visualize what they're reading. The first sentence says, Maya Lin was still in college when she found herself in the middle of a storm. When I read this, the first thing that pops out, what's the first thing that pops out to you? A middle of a storm, yes. I want to highlight that. Could a storm be a bad situation? I just made a connection. We've been talking about multiple meaning words. This is a phrase, middle of a storm. Could that be a multiple meaning? Could it mean you're really in the middle of a rainstorm? Could it mean that you're just in a bad situation? The point of all this is to slow their reading down and have students make connections and interpretations of the text so that they can get a better understanding of what they are reading. Some people didn't like her design. Oh my goodness, what do I want to write there? Oh no, why? I'm going to write, oh no, why? In reading this article, the students are going to realize that not everybody liked Maya Lin's design for the memorial. And so they're going to have a lot of discussion about that and why different people felt different things. And then what I really want them to do is to decide what is their own point of view. How do they feel? Do they agree? Which side do they agree with and why? So to do that, they're going to have to use information from the text and find text evidence to support their viewpoint. It is time for me to see what you can do. We have been practicing this. You've done some by yourself. You've done some for homework. You've done some with a partner. You're going to work again today with a partner, and your job is to go through the rest of this article, and I want to hear the talking. I want you to read. I want you to talk about what should we highlight. What does that mean? And there are going to be parts to this that are going to get confusing, okay? But you and your partner need to talk it out. One of the neat things about doing this type of strategy is while the kids are having this discussion, even though my focus was not main idea or my focus was not cause and effect, when you do this type of strategy, the kids start seeing that. So I've taught cause and effect, but now we're reading this article and they start seeing, oh my goodness, look, this is a cause and effect relationship. This is why this person did that. Or they'll see a main idea or a metaphor. And because I've taught metaphors, so now they see a metaphor and they make that connection to something I've already taught. Even though that was not my focus skill, it just all comes into play. It's like a spiraling of the whole curriculum. Y'all highlighted that it was in the shape of a V. What do y'all think about that?
Why is it in the shape of a V?
Why a V? Maybe you should say why. Why do y'all think it's a V? When I'm teaching this lesson, sometimes I will see a paragraph that I'm thinking, they're going to have trouble with this. And what I want to do is I want to go through each part and I want to talk about what that means. So the hardest thing for teachers sometimes is to let the kids struggle a little bit. So while they're reading that paragraph and I'm walking around, I want to just say, okay, this is what that means. But they start asking those questions. They start saying, well, what did they mean? Is it really a wound? Is it a bobo? What do they mean by that? And in that discussion, they start figuring it out themselves. And that is the most rewarding thing, when you see that they can figure that out themselves without me telling them. And that's hard for teachers sometimes because we want just to explain it. But you have to let the kids struggle. That's the part of the rigor of the new Common Core standards. This is our open response question, just like we have on every test and we do in class all the time. It says, not everyone liked Maya Lin's design for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Did we read that? Not everyone liked it. Explain your point of view about Maya Lin's design. At the end of reading an informational text, many times students are asked to answer an open-ended question. And in doing that, they really need to understand what the question is about. So one strategy we use is we look at the question, we analyze it, dissect it, and figure out what is it really asking. We highlight the important words, and sometimes these questions actually have two questions in them. And so students have to be able to realize that it's not just asking one, it's asking two questions. So we may even number them. And then once we realize what the questions are, they need to restate the question. What I tell my students is you have to act like the person reading this doesn't even know what the question is. So you need to restate the question and then put your answer, but then use text evidence. They need to go back in the story, find parts of the story, and they can reword it. They can say the author stated and put quotes. Some kind of way they've got to use information that is relevant to their answer. A few tips that I have for parents to help their child be more successful with reading and reading comprehension would be, when they start their homework, to first find a quiet place where they can concentrate. Secondly, if it is a reading assignment with paragraphs where they're reading informational text, have highlighters available. Sometimes when it's a pink highlighter or a blue highlighter, they get more excited about doing it. And then talk to them about the fact that this is not a race, that it's important for them to read slowly and to really try and understand what they're reading. Highlight important words, draw little pictures on the side to help them visualize, write a gist for each paragraph to give the main idea, make connections, have a discussion with them about what they're reading, ask them questions, have them ask you questions. And when they're done reading, have them retell to you what they read, everything that they remember. Another tip to help your child with reading fluency and reading comprehension is to read aloud with them. I think sometimes people think that you just read aloud with the little ones, the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, or even first, second grade, and then they kind of stop. Parents stop reading aloud to their children. But even 4th, 5th, 6th, in middle school, you should still be reading aloud to your child. Go to the library together. Find a book of interest on a higher level, because you're going to be reading out loud to them and with them. And then the strategies I'm talking about with highlighting and analyzing that text better, you can't do that in a library book, but you can do that orally with discussion. So as you're reading this text with them, stop to do that discussion. Talk about those words. What does this mean? What did the author mean by this metaphor? You can do that orally when you're doing that read aloud. It's still so important for parents to read aloud with their children at any age?